Ah, yes, Afghanistan, a beautiful place of joy, hope, and absolutely nothing wrong. Ah, crap, who invited? So, we all know that Afghanistan right now is in a quite bit of a rough state, and especially for women, they have been going through one of the most difficult times in history for about like 100 years, let's say, like around 1920s. Women's finally got rights. They did. Afghanistan was actually a really early state to support civil rights, even before the United States. I guess we're just that slow. But over the past time, that rights and all those rights have more of just faded out. All of the extremely disgusting and vile things that have happened now ever since the slow erosion of female respect has just been, well, just disheartening at first. Now, when we talk about women's rights and the organizations that set them up, we need to talk about what it means to be. Hold on, let me close my door. I closed my door. When we talk about what it means to be successful, a lot of people will think, oh, well, I did thing, and I guess it was really no. There is a really easy way to talk about if something is successful. Being successful means to be able to complete a task to the level that it was requested. If the task was not reached, then it was not successful. If the task was partially reached, then it was partly successful. Now, I honestly think personally that this is a really easy way to figure out if something is successful or not. So now we have that out of the way, let's talk about the crappy situation of women in Afghanistan. Now, I want to say, woman in Afghanistan has faced some of the harshest conditions following the war on terrorism, and mostly it's fault of Russia policy and U.S. foreign policy. Many have been dirted and rooted in poverty, silenced by the society, and a lot of them are like persecuted for just trying to speak up against a corrupt government. And they have even been denied places in power, such as, well, government. Now, of course, there's still people that are out there, although now, sadly, due to recent events, it's become much less successful. There were quite a couple of organizations that actually would helped out Afghanistan during this time to try to reverse the reversing of women's rights. So let's talk about the UN High Commissioner. Now, the UN, United Nations Human Rights, is exactly what you think. There was this one treaty that had a bunch of countries, and they all came together and had an absolute super duper party. And they said, hey, humans, I think they need to have rights. And now we have rights. And I honestly think it's really cool. I, I kind of like having rights. So I honestly think this was a good thing. Now, a branch of the UN was UN Women, which would help women of Afghanistan, but not super directly. They helped a lot of other people too. They had donate. There's actually a site for donations about this called. It's just Unwoman. Going across that, they have donations as well as the actions of the OHCHR. I do not understand why all these names to be so long, which was the High Commissioner Office of the United Nations. The methods they are using to further the cause is mostly through the act of resisting terrorism setbacks, but sadly, due to the Taliban, women's rights have been rolled back to pretty much non existent. The UN in this situation, I couldn't really even find much what they did except for setting up things because it seems to be pretty recent, so they only have a bunch of donation sites. But obviously, a lot of what's happened now has failed miserably due to the recent pull of soldiers from Afghanistan. Taliban's taken over. Taliban's doing all the big work, And now when we get to wear these cool, definitely not related to any sort of due to this day it's been utter failure. Most of these have been pretty big failure to revalue the lives for women. And it's caused a lot of problems. The UN in this situation has failed to revalue ability for women to protest freely, and it seems like it's all just back from ground one. The UN mostly used political pressure to try to free up the rights of the woman, as well as some very light helping. But most of what the help comes from is these three organizations: RAWA, RAWA, the Feminist Majority Foundation, and the Asia Foundation. These three did probably the best job at not screwing everything up, but making a lot of stuff better for people. RAWA was founded by Minan Keshwa Kamal in 1977 and started as a Soviet occupation. In 1987, sadly, the founder was assassinated. And what they've mostly helped with is with nonviolent. RAWA actually helps in similar ways to how the United States did, but in a lot of ways still different. There's some similarities. But what RAWA would mostly do is they would put pressure on the Taliban by opposing it, as well as leaking information of them. They they also helped mostly with basic humanitarian needs. A lot of these companies did help with humanitarian needs because most likely the government was doing all of the hard work as well as the USA to try to push back the Taliban. This is from Women in Afghanistan Under Taliban, Weebly.com. The Revolutionary Association of Women of Afghanistan is a non-violent organization at the forefront of international campaign for women's rights and democracy in Afghanistan. RAWA actively opposes the fundamentalist forces of Afghanistan. They also provide crucial healthcare, education, and income gathering services to women. RAWA was relentless, outspoken in its opposition to both the Taliban and the fundamentalist functions that they were fighting the Taliban that were fighting the Taliban. So technically they basically fought the people who were fighting their enemy. It all eventually came down to a no hope situation. The Feminist Majority Foundation, on the other hand, worked mostly through the education and more focused on women and children. And unlike this, they don't have a name that says unwoman. The Feminist Majority Foundation was in Afghanistan since 1996, and they had a huge help of humanitarian aid to Afghanistan women as well as educational funding for Afghanistan children. They would open up a bunch of like activities, kind of like how you would usually do Boy Scouts, but Afghanistan. They would help a lot of things. They would help boost up the economy. They they've they give homes. They'd ask for global outreach, public policy research. They would also do strategy development, and they also did public education and community organization. Both of the companies that have been listed currently have been more helping with the short-term issue they are suffering. But the Asia Foundation seems to be one of the only ones that actually has a plan to do long-term. The Asia Foundation is working to rebuild and create a providential government that supports Afghanistan citizens to create a stable, prosperous society. They also assist with the development of subnational governments and basically work as kind of like a better government. They work to make programs and civic education, and of course, free and fair elections. Now, sadly, we have to talk about these guys who, I mean, they're nobody likes these guys really. I mean, like this one, these three guys are dripping basically with guns, which I definitely don't know where those came from. But there's also similarities with the United States. This participated in nonviolent acts and opposed the government and attempted to pressure it into submission. Sadly, unlike the United States, it was ultimately unsuccessful as the Taliban rushed in mass, caused a full societal restructuring. Now, a lot of these organizations would help by holding meetings and seminars similar to the United States, and also similar to the United States in civil rights. They would leak media of abuse and discrimination to the public, but instead with more modern means through the use of cell phones and cameras. Unlike the United States, Wara had to go against the Taliban, insanely violent force. I mean, look at these guns. Those are some big guns. And this was honestly probably the most greatest threat to women due to their extremist ideology. Sadly, in the future, if the Taliban is not destabilized, honestly, and begins to get out, hopefully all of these organizations can rebuild the support for women that was there in the past. But so far, only the Asia Foundation has seemed to fix the problem for a long run by targeting the government to be able to reform and take action, but with the Taliban taking a more significant role and pushing the will of freedom out of the eye of the people, it seems like the Taliban has to go first for any of these changes to happen. I will also link down in the description all of just if you want to help these people out, just make sure to donate to these people. And I honestly hope for a world that's just better than what this is currently right now. Thank you for watching.